Hey everybody, welcome to this finale of Google Plus Business Spotlight. This is our last show. It's been over a year. We've been running this. I've talked about a bunch of businesses and how they're using Google Plus. And for Ben Fisher and myself, Stephan Hovnanian, we are thrilled to bring you our guest for today. Who I'm going to let him get into it, but essentially this is one of my favorite companies out there on the web. And when I first started on Google Plus, and when they killed Reader, the idea was, well, let me make sure all of my, my favorite places to get great information about marketing are all posting on Google Plus. And these guys were doing an okay job with it, but it wasn't as present and engaging as I would have liked it to be. So with a little bit of nudging, and I'm sure it wasn't just me, because as Rob will tell you in a few minutes, I'm sure, that there is a big community here for this organization. So once he realized that, and they started getting more engaging, we actually have some real results that we can show you. So I think for all of that, this is a great way to wrap up this whole series. And with that, I want to introduce Rob Zaleski from MarketingProfs. And I guess we'll just turn it over to you, Rob. Thank you so much for doing this, and we really appreciate you coming. Tell us a little bit about, you have a cool story, too, about how you joined MarketingProfs and especially how it relates to Google+. So hop over there. Make it happen.
Hello, everybody. I'm Rob Z, Marketing Manager for MarketingProfs. I'm super excited to be here. I've been in conversations with Stephan for quite a while, actually. I mean, way back from when I first kind of started on Google+, I was following Stephan, so it's great to see this kind of arc of the show, and I'm honored and thrilled to be here as part of the finale. In terms of MarketingProfs, I'm, like I said, I'm the marketing manager, so basically what I do is I handle all of our social content except for the Twitter handle, which pretty much everyone knows is Ann Handley and probably always will be. And I also handle our basic membership, which is our free membership that gets people kind of in the door and keeps everybody in the know on what's the latest articles and interesting things happening in marketing. And as Stephan mentioned, actually, the way I got this job was actually kind of the perfect networking story. And I actually wrote a blog post on LinkedIn about this. It turned out that I was following Mark Schaefer on his blog, Businesses Grow, and just kind of doing what you do. You comment, you share, you get to know somebody. And he actually had a contest for Born to Blog that he was doing with Stanford Smith, and the contest, you had to email him and tell him why you deserve to get a free copy of this book. And in the flow of that conversation, he found out that I live here in Austin, Texas, and he was coming down for South by, and we actually met when he was here during South by Southwest in 2013, and then when he came back for 2014, he was actually speaking, and I wasn't able to go, but he offered me a free day pass to come see him speak, which was really cool, and I geeked out and said, yeah, of course I'll take that. And so I saw him speak that morning and ended up hanging out with Carrie O'Shea Gorgone, who runs the Marketing Smarts podcast for MarketingProfs, and hung out with her all day, really got to know her really well. And it turned out a couple months later, she sent me an email and said, this position opened up at MarketingProfs. Would you like me to put you in contact with the person who's hiring? And for me, it was just one of those things where, yeah, I mean, that opportunity to interview with Ann Handley would be, a great networking opportunity. But the whole time I wasn't approaching any of it as, can I get a job at MarketingProfs? Hey, you guys, looking for anybody right now? It was all, friendly, conversational, just really excited to get to know people. And I guess culture-wise, it worked really well. I never had so much fun interviewing for a job in my life. But as Stephan said, the way it relates to Google Plus specifically, I saw a lot of opportunity for MarketingProfs. For me, I don't think every business should be on every single social network. There's just some places where you're not going to find people to connect with. But for MarketingProfs, I saw a huge marketing network and community here on Google+ that they just really weren't connecting with. And that was kind of one of my drivers as I was applying for the job and interviewing. I really wanted to get us connected and start talking to people, really get into the conversations, thank people for sharing and tagging us. We really weren't engaging in that two-way dialogue, and also taking part in some of the marketing communities, because I think there's a lot of great marketing communities on here that we can contribute to and be helpful. And that's kind of what MarketingProfs is all about. We want to be that friendly, helpful resource that you have fun chatting with, and you also learn something in the process. So I think that they knew that we needed to get on Google Plus. They just really didn't have kind of a strategy or much interest in it at the time, and so I was kind of that missing cog in the machine to really jump over to Google Plus, and it's been really, really awesome. I mean, the community here is, as I expected, is amazing. Like it's just so many great conversations, so many people that I've talked to, and I'll show you guys a graph later about some of the outcomes of that, which has been pretty spectacular.
That is a freaking spectacular way to go ahead and give an intro, Rob. I mean, you want to talk about social proof. You were just handling everything in a very authentic and kind of genuine way, and that opened up to a career opportunity basically for you, which has now allowed you to go ahead and kind of share that experience with MarketingProfs. I think one thing that everybody in the audience might want to know is because sometimes there is a big challenge in getting any organization to shift over and say, oh, we should look at Google+. And we were kind of talking about this a little bit in the green room, and that is what kind of a case did you have to make, or was there a case that you had to make to get MarketingProfs really on board and say, okay, yeah, we should take a look at Google Plus just a little bit more in depth?
Yeah, I started showing examples of other marketing agencies and marketers that were having great conversations, and I started pointing out to them how much conversation was happening just around MarketingProfs itself. The amount of times that they once I got access, I was able to really show them, but the amount of times that MarketingProfs was tagged, then there was not getting any responses, and the amount of times that people were sharing things with MarketingProfs, and there was no reciprocation to that. Just building up the case for that opportunity for conversation, and we at MarketingProfs, one thing that I really love about them is how connected they are with their community in other areas. I mean, Anne is amazing at responding on Twitter with the sheer volume that she gets on Twitter. And the same thing with Facebook and LinkedIn. We've got a very, very vibrant, actually we have two very, very vibrant LinkedIn groups. So, in terms of building community, I mean, Google Plus for me was a no-brainer because it's so easy with the circles and the community setup that you can really, really build a personal relationship with a lot of people that are interested in what you do, and that's pretty much how I worked it into the conversation. Was what MarketingProfs prides themselves on, we can excel at on Google Plus because it's a perfect setup for that.
Actually, and I'll just say one thing really quick. Everybody that's in the audience, do hang around because we're towards the end of the show. We're going to talk about results. We're going to show about the results that Google Plus has really given to MarketingProfs. So I'm kind of glad you brought that up, Rob. So, Stephan, you want to go ahead and...
Well, yeah, actually, no, I just wanted to remind everybody who's watching live, if you have any questions, I mean, Rob's just explained right here, how he was able to build a case, and I think just to recap that quickly, it was like, hey, guys, look at all the mentions, just look at what's there, right? And I know that, what was it? Oh, maybe, I don't know, sometime last year, maybe last summer, there was, MarketingProfs had done an informal poll of their Facebook audience, which I found interesting as it is. What's your least favorite social network? Which was Google Plus, overwhelmingly. I had some thoughts, and I shared them, and was given an opportunity actually to write a rebuttal, not a rebuttal, but basically a piece on their blog to say, hey, kind of, I mean, didn't end up in a job, but similar to the idea that Rob was talking about, where you have people who are listening, and then you can network a little bit, and you're engaging, and then you have an opportunity. So, yeah, I mean, they took me up on it, which was really cool. And since then, I will say, you guys are doing, I mean, you're doing a fantastic job of really understanding, the nuances in the culture. But, again, just to kind of bring this full circle, we talk about the mentions, we talk about finding the community. I mean, and I think, if we can, maybe in a little bit, we'll get into some of the, if there's any specific techniques that you use personally that maybe some of our audience could pull from, again, just because you have so much on your plate and have to manage that. I know we'll talk a little bit about that as well. But yeah, also anybody who has questions, fire away here, because we've only been here 10 minutes and we've covered a lot of ground already. So we want to hear from you. Yeah. So I mean, that's all I wanted to actually interject there. So what else did we have on our plate here to bring up next?
Well, I think you just brought up a great point, and that is let's talk a little bit about workflow, because how are you dealing with it when you're working with multiple social networks? I know one of the things that you've said, which I find personally, which resonates a lot with me at least, and I think a lot of people in our audience, is the fact that you really don't use a lot of automation tools. That you're actively listening. So, kind of if you could, kind of walk us through it. What's a day like? For Rob over at MarketingProfs, and how are you managing that? And then let's tie that into kind of how you're doing your circle management as well.
Sure.
I
I kind of refer to myself as a little bit of a social media purist in that I like very much to be on the platforms. I mean, throughout my entire workday, I've got one tab open with our Facebook page, one tab open with Twitter, one tab open with our Google Plus page, because I feel like you not only get better connections there, but you get a better feel of what's actually happening kind of in real time in the moment. But unfortunately, that takes a lot of time. So I actually am in the beginning stages of searching for a marketing platform to kind of bring everything together. I've got a few in mind, a couple people that I'm talking to right now. So anybody that has some great suggestions, help me out. But for me, it's there's kind of a few ways I do it. I love Buffer, both as a company and as a tool. Right now I'm using that and Oktopost, because Oktopost has kind of a little bit more of a B2B setup, and they actually have a calendar that I really like that you can really just literally look through and see what posts and how many posts you have ready to go. And that was actually somebody that the person that was doing it before me had already had Oktopost set up, so I kind of jumped in with that. But I still really like Buffer as a scheduling tool, kind of in real time. If I'm on a different website, their browser extension is really easy to use. I love that you can right-click on images and use that to buffer the image and then a link to the post. And I guess I'm not sure how familiar do you think people are with the whole tagging on Buffer. Is that something I should mention?
Yeah, let's get into that, because you're using one of the, I'd say, more. A lot of people don't know it. So,
right.
But yeah, I think they'd love to hear about it from you.
Cool. So I know for sure Buffer and Oktopost. I'm not sure about functionality. I'm assuming probably Hootsuite too. With the vanity URLs now, you can't use that to tag somebody. But what you can do is if you right-click on their name on a post and do copy link and then paste that into your don't hit enter, paste it into the browser, you can grab the old number that everybody's accounts used to be set up under. And if you do plus and that number in the automation tool, that will actually then translate to a tag when it actually goes live on Google+. So that unfortunately does add a little bit of extra time, because then rather than when you're native on the platform, you can just plus and find somebody, you actually have to go find them, copy, paste, move it over. But in terms of getting things scheduled, it works out pretty easily. And I'm one who, even if somebody's not active on Google+, I'll still tag them, just because, one, I like it to have in the post an actual tagged name, but two, maybe it'll encourage them to get a little more active on Google+. Who knows? So we'll see what happens.
I mean, and not to mention,
how you think, Rob.
Yeah, I mean that is a great point. I mean, but also semantically, it kind of ties it all together too. So when they do come around to adding their profile information, then it's pretty good for search as well.
And there's also just there's a culture here of mentioning and hat tipping, and I mean there's also today there's some funky thing coming out where the reshares of posts are starting to get treated a little differently, and so engagement and the way people are going to engage on certain posts is probably going to change around here. So just having that best practice and cultural stuff. You guys are, MarketingProfs is positioned itself to be a leader in the online marketing, social media marketing space. You guys should practice what you preach. So,
Absolutely.
Things like cross-posting a retweet from Twitter with a Hootsuite shortened link, people sniff that stuff out all the time, and they thumb their nose to it here on Plus, and they, you're not gonna get. It could be the greatest article in the world. Nobody's gonna care. Right. So, I think it's worth the extra effort, and I applaud you for doing it because, like I said, you're leading by example, which is a good thing.
And I was a fan of Google Plus, previous to that. I was actually telling Ben before we started that I think I can actually attribute it to Ryan Hanley. I've always been a listener of the Content Warfare podcast, and just listening to him talk about Google Plus got me really excited. And I had the invite from the early days, but once I really heard how he embraced it, that got me into it, and I went in both feet.
Yeah, it's a great shout. It's a great shout out to Ryan. We all love his work, and we had him on our show, of course. You watch that show too. Let's talk a little bit. Let's kind of move on. I mean, because now that we've talked a little bit about the culture and kind of how you're doing it, utilizing it with automation tools, and doing it properly with the culture. Let's talk a little bit more about how do you manage your circles, because you've got a little bit of secret sauce there, don't you?
Who, me? No, we've to make things easier for me, especially when I'm trying to tag, because I don't know if most people realize that, but the content that we have on the MarketingProfs website comes from lots of different people. We have kind of a constant flow of new writers and old writers, repeating writers. So I actually have a circle set up for MarketingProfs of just writing staff, and I'm constantly adding more and more to that every time I find another one, just to make sure that one, I can easily access them, but two, also kind of create that community of, hey, these are some smart people writing great content for MarketingProfs. I've also got one for our team, that to keep track of those who are and are not active on Google+. And I've also I follow a lot of other businesses to try to keep up on what everybody else is doing. I want to make sure that other people that are talking about great stuff in content marketing, that I'm sharing some of their content. Canva, for example, does amazing stuff on Google+. I think they just kill it, and so I always want to keep up on what's up with them. I think there's a tip I think I got from, it's either Dustin Stout or Mark Trafagan. Is it Trafagan? Trafagan.
It's Trafagan.
Okay. Sorry, Mark.
I think Mark will forgive you.
But it was an idea of kind of creating a must-read list of like a small group of people that you always want to see their content, and you maybe even can turn on the notifications for that so that you always see. And it's those people that are always sharing quality content, stuff that you're going to want to read and want to share. And that's something I recommend doing. Find a small handful of people that you really want to make sure that you're connecting with and listening to. And I think for businesses that's really important. If you've got customers on Google+, you want to see what they're saying. So create a small circle of those people and give yourself notifications so that you're always in the know of what they're doing, because that's a good way to keep up on the listening portion of Google+.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely one of the probably the most critical aspects of just managing your time on G+. Is by creating, what you call a notify circle or a VIP type of circle. And you're right, you're getting all of those. When you log into Google+ on your mobile device or on desktop, those are the posts that you see in your notifications, along with all, of course, your shares and the mentions and such. But it's critical, and you're right, it's totally critical for business not only to listen to customers, but also to listen to prospects and what's going on in the industry. So yeah, dude, kudos for you for doing that.
Also, the notification circle, all your notifications, kind of goes back to our little workflow comment discussion before, but about now, how do you guys do anything special with your notifications? Do they come in through email? Do you sort them into, do you flag them, sort them? Tell us a little bit about that, because you get a ton, I'm sure.
No, we do get a decent amount. We're not quite to massive levels yet. We haven't broke 10,000 followers yet, so we still got some ways to go, and I'm still working on building that up a little bit more. What I like to do, again, like I said, I'm kind of a platform purist, so I typically will check in on Google Plus about 3 times a day, sometimes more. If for some reason I accidentally click on that tab and I get lost into Google Plus land again, but yeah, I check in about 3 times a day to clear out the notifications, make sure I thank people for sharing articles, jump into conversations. Sometimes if I see something in the feed there, I'll do a quick share as well to get something else out there. So I kind of plan my scheduling with how I try to check back in with Google Plus, so that something doesn't sit too long without being responded to or looked at. So that way, everybody knows that they are important and their feedback is important and their comments are important. So it goes back to that whole community thing. Like, I want everyone to know that we appreciate them, and we're not going to make them sit for 12 hours, without a response, since they took the time to respond to us.
You bring up a really good point there. So, what is too long?
I think it varies. I mean, there's been studies that have been done that people that reach out to businesses especially on Twitter, they expect a response within an hour. So it kind of varies.
Doesn't it vary by industry too? Like utility
Definitely.
companies, cable companies, finance, versus and consumer goods versus insurance, or I don't know. I remember seeing a couple of probably on your website with response times and some kind of a chart, because it did break it down. Because a lot of those benchmarks need to be broken down. You can't just, it isn't a one size fits all. People, everybody's expectations are different. Their usage is different. So.
Exactly, and most people wouldn't view the type of incoming notifications that we get as critical or crucial to respond immediately, but I still treat them as important. Even if it's you've got your first batch and you've got your other notifications, and I treat the other notifications just as importantly as I do the ones who are in my circles, because those are new people that I can be joining into our community. Those are new voices that I want to hear. So I don't ignore those, and I don't treat them any differently than I do someone who shares our articles every day, because I think those are the connections that are worth making to start to continue building out your community on Google Plus.
Yeah, I mean that right there is golden, Rob. It's treat everybody the same way. I mean, just like you should do in life, really.
Exactly.
So
well, let's because you're segueing really nicely into probably the next topic here that we should talk about, which is results, right? I see Ben smiling. So
read his mind, huh?
Read his mind. Well, we've been doing this long enough together. So you talk about, all right. So you have give us your super priority goals for MarketingProfs, because then we can talk about, I guess, how they're playing out and the types of results. Sound good?
Right. And the way I approach Google Plus, I understand that because most of the information, with just the way that you post on Google Plus, most of the information is already there. So I don't treat it as a massive traffic driver, and it's, if I look at Google Analytics, that shows, it's not one of our top 5. But for me, it's having those conversations there is my kind of metric for success. If I come in and check my Google Plus 3 times a day and I have notifications every time, and that to me is the beginning of success. And actually, since we're talking about results, let me show this little graph here. This actually is our audience growth. And I went back a few months before I started, and you can see it's completely flat and static. And then as soon as we started posting, as soon as we started tagging people and becoming active on the platform, you can just see a constant and steady growth of audience on Google+. And you can even see it's, what is the other? I forget. It was newly added. So you can see that we're adding, and you can see a big jump in the beginning of September when I really went all in. But you can see we're consistently adding new people, and that's also helping us grow. So it's been pretty awesome, and it's a good case study for just being active and engaged in that conversation can grow your audience. If you're talking to the right people, if you're seeking out the right people, if you're responding to the people that are genuinely interested in what you're doing, you can really see a massive change in results. And something funny I like to point out is we just broke 100,000 fans on Facebook, and there are many times I get more engagement on a Google Plus post than I do on a Facebook post.
Oh, that's classic.
And we haven't even broke 10,000 on Google Plus yet. Actually, we haven't even broken 8,000 yet. So yeah, we're like coming up on almost 7,000. So we've got a lot of growth potential to go, and to see that kind of return on engagement is fantastic, especially, we used to have, we got killed by the Facebook apocalypse, I'm not going to lie. That we got crushed by that. And so that's another reason why I wanted to turn to Google Plus, because I think we can really speak to people who want to hear from us and actually reach them here, which is great.
Right, Rob,
thanks, Rob. That's, if this wasn't a commercial for Google Plus, it is now. You kind of nailed it for all of us who've been saying this kind of thing for 3 years. Well, here, guys, here's a chart, and I think you make a beautiful case for it. I want to bring up real quickly. I want to bring up a question because it kind of ties in. It was asked a little bit earlier by one of our viewers, Carrie-Anne Foster, who dragged herself out of bed today because she's not feeling well. She told me on Facebook yesterday.
I appreciate that.
Found out this was going to be our last one. She's a real long-time supporter of the show. We really appreciate you, Carrie-Anne. And your question was, what was the biggest challenge in gaining traction on Google Plus? And I wanted to bring this up now because you mentioned that traffic wasn't as important, or inbound referral traffic wasn't one of those performance metrics that was hugely important to you, whereas mentions were, or conversation and things like that. But how do you continue to make, I don't want to say it's a vanity metric, but how do you continue to make the case when people ask you at the company, well, you're spending all this time, is it worth it for us?
Right. Well, in terms of gaining traction, the biggest challenge was, I think, people, although they were tagging us and sharing our content, they weren't really expecting us to be active, because up until that point we really hadn't been super active. So part of the challenge in gaining traction was just changing that perception of us on that platform. And Anne posts some stuff, but she's not super active. So I think just in general, MarketingProfs wasn't anticipated to be this constant flow of information on Google Plus, and I needed to change that. And so I think through the tagging and through getting a few articles and pictures and things like that out a few times a day, just being consistent so people knew there was going to be stuff coming, that really helped in gaining traction and changing that perception that we weren't very active on Google Plus. In terms of continuing to build a case for it, the fact that it is now at least showing up on our Google Analytics is a good sign. It is. I think it just barely squeaked into the top 10, which is good. So that is nice to be able to show.
I've got to interject really quickly, Rob. One thing I will say, and we talk to our clients about this all the time, and that is because your site's not fully HTTPS, the Google Plus referrer is also getting stripped, and also a lot of Google search also gets stripped. So you don't really see the full organic benefit that you also get from G+.
Interesting.
So I would start throwing in direct traffic, referral traffic, and I forget the other one off the top of my head. Anyway, start throwing those into your reports too, and actually do a comparison of when you start, before you started, and then after you started, and then even do, like, say, the last 3 months. Take those together, you'll be able to even build a much more stronger case.
Yeah, that's good to know. I'm gonna take some notes on that after this. I actually do have another little clip here too that can show people a general idea. You can see leading up to from end of April until the end of July. You see we have just a little bit of posts here and there, not a whole lot going on. This is on a week-by-week basis. But as soon as you see an uptick in the amount of posts that we had, which then of course equates to the amount of tagging and mentioning that we're doing, you see a jump in engagement, and it's almost completely relative to how many posts we have to how much engagement we're seeing. So it's showing that people are getting used to having those posts showing up from Google Plus or from MarketingProfs, and actually engaging with them. You can actually see the week that I went to B2B where I wasn't on Google Plus at all. It's just a plummeting drop. Because
what's really interesting is the last part of this graph, right? The after you got back from B2B, you can see that there's sustained engagement, even though the number of posts you've made has sort of leveled off. There's still sustained engagement, and I think. I'm not going to. No, I'm not even going to think. I can guarantee you that that's because you've now spent 2 months or so retraining the audience here that, yeah, you guys do show up. We're part of this. So now the engagement has gone up, and it stays up because, let's face it, if I don't want to use any names, but there's other sites out there that do a great job posting on Google Plus, but that's the extent of it. Yet they have very rabid fans, and very similar to you guys, where there's people tagging them and mentioning them, but there's there's nobody coming and saying even thank you or even with a +1. So what happens then? It's not worth it. It's like you say, well, forget about it. I'm not going to bother. I'll use they instead of plussing the plus mentioning the person.
It has to be reciprocal. I completely
you have
agree.
to be. It has to be. And now I guess what I'm saying is that there's somebody there who's actually monitoring all this stuff.
Yeah.
And I think this last part of the graph is a beautiful example of that.
And one thing that Marketing Profs really prides ourselves on is being very human. We don't want to come across as an automated content machine. It helps us that we have Ann Handley as kind of a face of the company, but every one of us is very, very personable, at least online. Some of us would prefer to hide in a little corner. But you have that at every company. But as a brand and as a company, we want to be very approachable. We want to be very conversational, and we want to give people information in a way that resonates with them, and it doesn't feel like they're being shouted at or taught. We're not a teacher in front of a class. We're part of a study group. Just going over what's happening in marketing and what can we do differently and how can we improve. And that's really what I try to create in the community is that that back and forth and that communal feel of we're all having a conversation here. I'm not shouting at you. You're not tagging me and I'm ignoring you. I want it to be very interactive.
And then at the end of the day, you have your paid services, which are your pro memberships, or even the free membership to the site, which allows you to pretty much view all the expanded content from all the writers and everything like that. So you have that's the call to action. So here we are. We're proving that we know what we're talking about. We're building that trust and authority, and then once in a while we throw out a call to action. You guys have a lot of events going on throughout the year: seminars, webinars, courses, and all live events. So once in a while you throw those out, and I'm sure that again it might not be as large as, let's say, Twitter or Facebook, but I'm sure that you're seeing the benefits of at least of the engagement on those posts, where people may have ordinarily just before just they're just they're cross posting from their their deal from Twitter or whatever, and I'm just not going to pay attention to this. So whether it's translating into actual sales today, who knows? At the bare minimum, you're getting you're building a lot more awareness over here, which that's everybody talks about that, right? When it's time to make that call to action, then we all have hopefully build up enough trust where people will say, yeah, I'm going to go do it.
Absolutely. That's the way we approach it. Is we want people to feel excited about being part of that. We don't want to just feel like, oh God, here comes another promo from Marketing Profs. We want it to be like, oh wow, cool, yeah, they're sharing this with me, and that's because that's how we feel about it.
Well, you're talking with, and you're not talking at.
Exactly.
I think that's the key differentiator right there.
Yeah.
So bravo.
Speaking of calls to action, I can't believe we've blown through a half hour here already. Fantastic information, and again, a beautiful case study wrapped in a nice little package with purple shirt on, and about how to really what you can get out of this platform. And Rob, I really appreciate it. So why don't we we all have calls to action. Because we're wrapping this up. It's like, where do we go? We're not going to do a Seinfeld closing here where everybody just kind of fades into black and nobody knows what the hell's going to happen. So Rob, tell us, give us something to do when
Awesome.
Everybody's done watching.
Well, as we mentioned, we love having people as part of our community, and if you want to sign up to have access to all of the articles and seminars and events that we have coming up, and you also want to get a really cool I'm a Marketer, Not a Miracle Worker sticker, I'm going to drop a link over here in the chat, and you can sign up there, and we'll mail you that sticker, and you'll be part of our email list, getting all of the really cool information that we have to share. We'll be happy to have you.
Excellent. We'll make sure that makes its way over into the comments. Stephan, what about you? What's your call to action?
You know what? Can you go first so that I can put this in? I'm doing this in the comments.
Yep, no problem.
Thanks.
So, first of all, Rob, thanks for being on the finale of G Plus Spotlight.
An absolute blast.
Yeah, we really appreciate it. I mean, we're ending it off with real results. I mean, everything that you've talked about, from consistency to circle management to paying attention to everyone as if they're not everybody is basically a VIP in a sense.
Exactly.
Build a case, you're being human and being approachable. I mean, these are all the great tenets of G+, and at the end of the day, you're getting ROI. And hopefully you're tracking that link, so you're going to find out how many people actually convert. People, go.
Oh, yeah.
Sign up for free. My call to action is keep an eye on steady demand. Since we're wrapping up G+ Spotlight, it's been a fantastic year. We're going to be going ahead and we're going to be launching something called the Brand Masters Page Clinic Camp, which is going to be starting sometime in January. Just keep an eye on my profile, plus Ben Fisher or plus Steady Demand. And I'll be dropping a link in the comments where you can sign up to become basically a case study where we will analyze what's working and what's not working on Google Plus for you. And everybody's going to learn together. So, yeah, that's my call to action. Just
side note, I really love that steady demand tool. I've used that for a couple of companies I've worked for now.
Thank you. Are you talking about the audit tool?
Yeah, the audit tool, the one that tells you if you're doing things right on Google Plus and if you have things set up properly on your website. I really dig that tool, actually. It's very cool, very friendly and useful.
Okay, I guess I have a second call to action. Keep an eye on SteadyDemand.com because we are actually improving the audit tool. It's going to be coming up, and we're redesigning its interface, and we're actually adding a lot more cooler functionality to it. So it's a brand new year, so it's just another way for us to keep on giving back.
There we go. Man, oh man. A lot of stuff going on over there. It's exciting. All right, my turn. I have a lot of today, about a half hour before we went live here, I was able to publish a landing page for a new Hangout series I'm starting. Going with more of a mini-series approach, taking things in chunks. There's a start and an end instead of an ongoing show. A lot of content repurposing. This one I'm running through my web business, Shovi websites. It's about email marketing. At the end of the day, today's consumer is so much, so technologically advanced. They're savvy. Their expectations are through the roof, and what better way to communicate with them one-on-one and fight all of the social stuff that's going on and the algorithms and the news feeds and everything than within their inbox. Problem with that is but there are very few companies that are doing it right and really treating it as a one-on-one relationship. So I have some fantastic people. One of them I met through a MarketingProfs course years ago. And we're going to talk about email newsletter design. We're going to talk about marketing automation, landing pages, tests, all kinds of stuff. If you want to up your game, follow the Shovi websites page. And right now, actually, I have or just let me know. I have a promotion going, not a promotion, a link to the landing page with a little trailer video. So I'm really excited about that. A lot of exciting stuff coming out. I have another opt-in guide too, which sort of complements this. It should be out in a week. And it's all about here on out, just taking what we've learned and applying it, and walking the walk. So this has been great. All right, sniffles all around here, I guess, and
big hugs,
and fade to black and stuff like that. But yeah, thank you, Rob and MarketingProfs. Really appreciate it. Again, a great way to wrap things up. And Ben,
honored to be part of this.
Fantastic working with you over the course of these past few months, especially. Hey, so I guess we'll see everybody around on the Plus, right? Keep following the page too, because even though this is done, there's a ton of great information from that we've created over this last year, and we're going to use it. So use this page, use it as a library, go to the website, still stay involved with the email list. Once in a while, we'll keep in touch, and it's good information. It's here for you guys.
And you know what? I mean, I guess we could close out the show by saying I also want to thank everybody that's been a loyal follower, loyal connection and relationship actually with G+ Spotlight. We did this show for everybody, and not just for ourselves. It was a learning process, a learning experience, and we've had great guests like Rob throughout the entire year. I mean, really. So this is really awesome to end off, with you, Rob. I mean, thank you so much, and Stephan, it's been great to work with you. And as adults would say when they say sign off, bye everybody, have a beautiful time. Oh, I guess I need to hit the stop button here. Okay. Bye.
Bye, everyone.